The studio lights burned hot, but the tension between Denzel Washington and Donald Trump made the air feel even heavier. This wasn't just another televised debate, it was a spectacle, and everyone in the audience knew something explosive was about to happen. Trump leaned forward with that familiar smirk, ready to dismiss any challenge. But Denzel didn't give him the chance. He turned his gaze directly at Trump, his voice low and cutting. "You think people forgot what you did in the past? Let me remind you, live, right here, in front of millions." The crowd froze. The silence was so sharp it felt like the cameras could cut through it. Trump's smirk faded instantly, his jaw tightening, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. This wasn't the script he was expecting. "Don't go there, Denzel," Trump shot back, his voice rising with unease. "This is about the future, not the past." But Denzel didn't blink. He leaned closer, his words heavy with precision. "The past defines the man. And America needs to remember exactly who you are before you pretend to be something you're not." Gasps rippled through the studio audience. Phones shot up, live streams buzzing as social media feeds exploded in real time. Hashtags began to trend instantly, hashtag Denzel vs. Trump and hashtag the past returns. Trump, visibly rattled, tried to regain control. He gestured to the crowd, his voice cracking with forced confidence. "These are lies. Old stories. They don't matter anymore." But Denzel's calm, almost surgical delivery made every word sting. He wasn't shouting, he didn't need to. His tone carried more weight than Trump's volume ever could. The moderator sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let the wildfire burn. The studio audience leaned forward in their seats, sensing they were watching history, or at least a viral moment destined to dominate every feed within the hour. And then Denzel delivered the blow. "You can shout all you want, Donald. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you want it to. Tonight, people will remember." The crowd erupted, half with cheers, half with stunned silence. The atmosphere shifted completely. For the first time, Trump wasn't controlling the stage. The hook had been set. Trump's face flushed red, his composure cracking under the weight of Denzel's words. The audience could feel it, the power dynamic had shifted. But Trump wasn't about to surrender, not on live television. He straightened his tie, pointed across the stage, and roared. "You're just an actor. You read lines, I run the country. Don't lecture me about the truth." The audience gasped. Some booed, others cheered, the studio splitting down the middle. But Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and let Trump's words hang in the air like smoke. Then, with the timing of a master storyteller, he delivered a cutting response. "You call it acting, Donald. I call it holding up a mirror. And the reflection of your past isn't something this country can afford to ignore." The crowd exploded, chanting Denzel's name. Phones buzzed louder, hashtags multiplied, hashtag mirror to Trump, hashtag past exposed. The moderator's voice cracked as he tried to restore order, but the duel had taken on a life of its own. Trump slammed his hand on the desk. "This is nothing but a witch hunt. Old scandals dug up by Hollywood elites to smear me. People don't care." But Denzel leaned forward, voice low enough that the audience had to hold its breath to hear. "If they didn't care, Donald, you wouldn't be sweating right now." That line cut deeper than any shout could. The camera zoomed in on Trump's jaw, clenched so tightly it seemed like it might snap. His eyes darted toward the crowd, hungry for their approval, desperate to see loyalty reflected back at him. But the audience wasn't giving him the full applause he was used to. Instead, murmurs spread through the studio, a wave of doubt rising. The energy was shifting, slipping from Trump's grasp with every second Denzel held the stage. And then Denzel twisted the knife. He leaned closer to the mic, looked straight into the camera, and said, "America, ask yourself this, if the truth didn't matter, why does he fear it so much?" The room detonated. Applause, shouts, even laughter filled the air. Trump's eyes widened, realizing he was no longer just debating, he was losing control of the narrative, live, with the entire world watching. The firestorm had only just begun. Trump slammed both fists on the table, his voice rising above the roar of the audience. You think you can humiliate me? You think you can stand here, some Hollywood tough guy, and talk about my past? You've got no idea what it takes to lead a nation. His words thundered, but his hands trembled slightly, betraying the storm inside. The crowd split again, half shouting, "Trump, Trump," while the other half rose to their feet chanting, "Denzel. Denzel." The studio had become an arena. Denzel didn't raise his voice. That was his power. He simply waited until the noise simmered down, then leaned into the mic, his gaze locked on Trump like a spotlight. "Donald, leadership isn't about how loud you can yell, or how many people you can intimidate. It's about accountability. And every time someone mentions your past, you call it a witch hunt. But the truth? The truth doesn't need spin. It stands on its own." The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the studio lights, the click of cameras, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Trump pointed at him, his voice cracking. "Accountability? Don't preach to me about accountability. You live in mansions, you cash million-dollar checks, and you dare lecture me about responsibility to the American people?" Denzel's lips curved into the faintest smile, the kind that tells you the next line will be lethal. He spoke slowly, deliberately, making every word sting. "You're right, Donald. I don't run the country. But I never asked this nation to trust me with its future. You did. And with that trust comes a debt you've never paid." The audience erupted, cheers, whistles, applause. Hashtags flashed across screens worldwide, #debt unpaid, #Denzel's Trump, #truth wins. Trump leaned forward, trying to reclaim ground. "I made America great. People love me. They'll never turn on me." Denzel shook his head. His tone was almost sorrowful now, but sharper than any insult. "No, Donald. They don't love you. They love the idea of what you promised them. But promises without honesty are just lies dressed in red, white, and blue." The crowd went wild. Some people stood on chairs, fists pumping in the air. Trump's jaw tightened, his face a storm of rage and disbelief. The battle lines were drawn, and for the first time, he wasn't the one dictating the tempo. Trump's face reddened, his voice breaking into the kind of bark he used at rallies. "You're nothing but an actor. You play pretend for a living. You don't know about jobs, about borders, about keeping this country safe. You stand here acting like some prophet. What are you, the savior of America now?" The words shot across the stage like bullets. His supporters clapped, whistled, banged on chairs. Trump smirked, convinced he'd landed the blow. But Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned back, let the noise crash and fade, then looked directly at Trump with eyes that didn't blink. "You're right, I am an actor. I've played kings, I've played men broken by life, I've played men who had to stand tall when the world tried to crush them. And you know what I learned, Donald? People don't remember the show, they remember the truth beneath it. The same truth you've been running from your entire life." The crowd gasped. A few people shouted, "Tell it, Denzel," while others tried to shout him down. But the momentum was shifting again, the energy of the room sliding away from Trump. Trump leaned in, spitting his words like venom. "Truth? You talk about truth? Look at Hollywood, it's corrupt, it's fake, it's filled with phonies just like you. You lecture me while your whole world is built on scripts and lies." The attack was sharp, personal, cutting. But Denzel's comeback was sharper. He leaned forward, voice steady, each word like steel. "Here's the difference, Donald. I act on screen. You act in real life. The difference is when I say it's over, the cameras stop rolling. But when you lie, when you perform, real people pay the price. Families pay. Soldiers pay. America pays." The crowd exploded. Cheers shook the studio, drowning out Trump's sputtering protests. Hashtags erupted online, #YouActIRL, #DenzelTruth, #StopTheShow. Trump slammed his hand on the desk again, shouting, you don't scare me. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Denzel didn't miss it. He leaned closer, lowered his tone to a whisper that somehow carried across the studio. I'm not here to scare you, Donald. I'm here to remind you, you can't outrun the past. And tonight, the world sees it. The studio froze. The audience knew they were watching not just an argument, but a dismantling. Trump leaned back, raising his palms to the audience as if begging for sympathy. His tone dropped, turning almost theatrical. You see what's happening here, folks? They always come after me. The media, the elites, now Hollywood actors. I'm the one fighting for you. I'm the one they're trying to silence. I'm the victim of the biggest witch hunt in history. The crowd stirred, some nodding, others rolling their eyes. A portion of his supporters tried to chant USA. USA, but it sounded weaker this time, forced. Denzel let him finish. He didn't interrupt, didn't raise his hand. He waited until the last echo of witch hunt died. Then, with a voice that cut like glass, he spoke. Victim? You? Donald, victims don't own private jets. Victims don't build towers with their names plastered in gold. Victims don't sit on television bragging about their billions. Victims don't crush the little guy just to get a bigger slice of the pie. The studio roared, the kind of roar that made the cameras shake. Trump tried to interject, but Denzel's momentum was unstoppable. You call yourself a victim while real victims bury their children from gun violence. While single mothers work 3 jobs and still can't afford rent. While veterans, men and women who bled for this country, sleep on the streets. Don't you dare hijack their pain to play your little martyr act. A silence fell, deep and heavy. Even Trump's most loyal backers in the audience hesitated. The words "don't you dare" hung in the air like thunder. Trump's jaw tightened. His hand slammed on the desk again. You're twisting it. You don't know what I've sacrificed. You don't know what it's like to be attacked every single day. Denzel leaned forward, calm but deadly. His tone softened, but that softness was more dangerous than rage. No, Donald, you don't know what sacrifice is. You've never had to bury a brother who served. You've never had to watch a child starve. You've never walked into a room and been judged for the color of your skin before you said a single word. You're not a victim, you're addicted to playing one. And tonight, your script just fell apart. The studio erupted again, this time louder than ever. People jumped to their feet, clapping, shouting, some even wiping away tears. Social media went nuclear, hashtag not a victim, hashtag Denzel exposed Trump, hashtag truthbomb. Trump sat frozen, lips moving but no sound coming out. For the first time, it wasn't him commanding the stage. Trump shot up from his chair, face flushed, voice booming over the studio mics. You think you're so righteous, Denzel? You're just another Hollywood phony. You read scripts, you cry on cue, and you pretend like you know the struggles of ordinary Americans. You're nothing but an actor playing hero on television. The audience gasped. Some of his loyalists clapped, but it was nervous, shaky applause. Camera zoomed in on Trump's face, sweat glistening, jaw tight, eyes wild. Denzel didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Then, he struck. You're right about one thing, Donald. I am an actor. But here's the difference, when the lights go down, I stop pretending. You've been playing a role your entire life, the billionaire savior. The tough guy outsider. The patriot with a golden crown. It's not leadership. It's theater. Bad theater. The studio erupted, laughter mixed with applause, a tidal wave of energy crashing over the stage. Trump raised his hand to speak, but Denzel's voice cut right through. And let me tell you something about ordinary Americans. I've walked with them. I've sat at their kitchen tables. I've looked into the eyes of kids who don't know if dinner's coming tonight. I've buried friends who didn't make it home from war. That's not a role. That's life. And no camera, no gold tower, no campaign rally can fake that. The roar was deafening now. People stood on their feet, phones flashing, the moment already going viral across every corner of the internet. Hashtags exploded in real time, hashtag bad theater, hashtag mask off Trump, hashtag Denzel owned him. Trump slammed the desk, trying to regain control. This is a setup. This whole show is rigged against me. Denzel leaned forward, his voice low, steady, slicing through the chaos. No, Donald. This isn't rigged. This is what the truth sounds like when it finally shows up in the room. The words hit like a hammer. The crowd froze, then erupted again, stronger, louder, unstoppable. Trump, red-faced and cornered, leaned toward the cameras like a man clinging to his last lifeline. Look at this. Look at what's happening. They don't want me to speak, they don't want me to fight for you. They want to silence me, silence you. But I'll never back down, never. His loyalists cheered, but it was fractured, scattered. The rest of the studio was restless, caught between disbelief and fury. Trump pointed straight at Denzel, jabbing his finger like a weapon. This man doesn't care about you. He's rich. He's Hollywood. He's not one of you. He's just here to humiliate your president. The words echoed, but instead of uniting the room, they fractured it further. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. And then, Denzel stood. Calm, commanding. His voice cut through the noise like thunder. Donald, stop hiding behind these people. You've used them as your shield long enough. Every time you get cornered, every time your lies run out, you point to the crowd and scream, "They're with me." But here's the truth. He turned, facing the audience, his voice heavy with fire. You've been lied to. Sold slogans instead of solutions. Promises instead of progress. He says he fights for you, but he builds walls for himself. He says he hears you, but he's too busy hearing his own applause. That's not leadership. That's a trap. The room froze. For the first time, Trump supporters wavered, some even lowered their signs, their cheers dying in their throats. Denzel didn't let up. His eyes locked on the crowd, every word slicing deeper. He says I'm Hollywood. But here's the thing, I never asked you to worship me. I don't need a crown, I don't need a rally, and I sure as hell don't need to pretend I'm your savior. You don't need another actor. You need someone who tells you the truth, even when it burns. The silence was suffocating, then the crowd erupted, not in Trump's favor, but for Denzel. Applause thundered through the studio, drowning out Trump's protests. Phones shot up, recording, streaming, blasting the moment to millions. Trump tried shouting over the roar, "Fake news. This is all fake news." But his voice was swallowed whole. For the first time, the stage no longer belonged to him. Trump's face twisted into rage, desperation seeping through his every gesture. He slammed the desk with his palm, the microphones rattling. You're a fraud, Denzel. A fraud. You think just because you made a few movies, you understand America? You don't know anything about real sacrifice. You don't know what it means to build an empire from nothing. The crowd gasped. It was pure panic disguised as bravado, a man swinging wildly in the dark. Cameras zoomed in, Trump's sweat glistened under the studio lights. His voice cracked as he hurled his next attack. You're just another spoiled celebrity, Hollywood trash. I built towers, I built an entire movement. What have you built? Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, his calmness cutting sharper than Trump's fury. Then, he delivered the blow. What have I built? His tone was low, steady, dangerous. I've built trust. I've built hope. I've built a voice for people who didn't have one. And unlike you, Donald, I didn't build it on bankruptcies, lawsuits, and broken promises. The studio fell silent. Trump blinked, stunned. Denzel pressed on, his words heavy as stone. You brag about towers of steel, but you forget, steel rusts. Concrete cracks. The empire you built was always for yourself. But the truth I speak? That lives long after I'm gone. And that, Donald, is why you fear me. The audience erupted. A tidal wave of applause crashed through the studio, shaking the very set. Some of Trump's own supporters stood frozen, their eyes wide as the realization spread, this wasn't the same game anymore. Trump's lips trembled, searching for a retort, but nothing came. He gripped the podium like a man losing his balance, drowning in a moment he couldn't control. Denzel straightened, his final words slicing through the noise like a verdict. You built towers. I built futures. And today, the people just decided which one matters. The roar that followed was deafening. Within minutes of the confrontation, the internet was on fire. Hashtags exploded across every platform, hashtag Denzel destroyed Trump, hashtag truth versus towers, hashtag mask off Donald. The clip of Denzel's takedown spread like wildfire, looping endlessly on phones, televisions, and giant LED screens in Times Square. Commentators shouted over each other on cable news. One host called it the most devastating moment of live television in a decade. Another whispered, Trump may never recover from this. On social media, millions of viewers replayed the exact second Denzel leaned forward and delivered his line. Steel rusts. Concrete cracks. But the truth lives forever. That soundbite became legend overnight. Memes surfaced instantly, Trump's face frozen in shock, paired with captions like, when the empire collapses, and Denzel dropped the hammer. Trump's team scrambled. His aides pushed out frantic statements, calling the exchange Hollywood theatrics and accusing Denzel of disrespecting a president. But the damage was already done. Every attempt to spin the story only poured gasoline on the flames. Meanwhile, Denzel's camp said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence itself was louder than Trump's rage. His calm, steady words now belonged to the people, and the people carried them everywhere. Late-night shows replayed the confrontation, comedians tearing into Trump's collapse. One joked, forget towers, Trump couldn't even build a comeback. The audience roared with laughter, but beneath it was the undeniable sense that something historic had just happened. By sunrise, Denzel Washington wasn't just trending, he was being hailed as a man who cracked open the facade, the one who looked Trump in the eye and stripped away the myth. The world had seen it live, a mask shattering on stage. And for the first time in years, Donald Trump looked small. The studio had turned into a storm. Trump, red-faced and trembling with fury, slammed his hand on the desk, the microphone rattling. You think you're some kind of hero, Denzel? He roared. You're just an actor, a performer. Nobody takes you seriously. The audience gasped. The insult hung in the air like a blade. For a moment, the cameras caught Trump's desperate glare, eyes wide, searching for control he no longer had. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned in, voice calm, razor sharp. An actor pretends. But what I said tonight wasn't a performance. It was your truth, and the whole world saw it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Trump froze, his mouth open but no words coming out. The lights above buzzed, the cameras zoomed closer, and every viewer at home felt the weight of that pause. Then the audience erupted. Cheers, applause, and chants drowned out the studio walls. The sound spilled into the streets, where crowds had gathered around screens, clapping and shouting Denzel's name. Trump tried to speak again, but it was too late, the broadcast had already chosen its ending. The camera locked onto Denzel, his face steady, his eyes unshaken. Millions would replay that final stare for weeks, months, maybe years. Commentators would call it the night the empire cracked. Historians would mark it as the moment when words defeated power. And as the credits rolled, one phrase echoed across the world, etched into headlines, whispered on timelines, shouted in crowded bars. Trump's mask fell. And Denzel didn't even need to touch it. The story wasn't just viral. It was immortal. Tonight wasn't about politics. It wasn't about parties, polls, or applause. It was about truth, raw, undeniable truth. For too long, power has hidden behind money, fame, and carefully crafted masks. But when the lights are bright and the cameras are rolling, the truth has a way of breaking through. What you witnessed wasn't just a clash of voices. It was a reminder: no one, no matter how powerful, is untouchable when faced with their own history. And remember this: the loudest man in the room is often the weakest. Real strength doesn't scream. Real strength stands firm, speaks calmly, and leaves no doubt. If you take one thing from tonight, let it be this: power doesn't protect you from the truth. The truth protects us from power. Thank you for watching. Stay awake. Stay aware. And never, ever be afraid to call out the mask when it slips.